down are those wind turbines that you see when you drive through the gorge. And you might think, well, maybe they ought to shut down, the power, the turbines in the 4 lower Snake dams, But those are a lot slower. I mean, they're a lot harder, right? You need a lot more planning to shut those down.
Yeah, they're like 3 gigawatts.
So anyway, but what are these? What really? Right? You're not doing philosophy until you're doing you're not doing moral philosophy until you are doing non-consequentialist moral philosophy. All right? Consequentialism is the de facto and go-to and just default form of moral philosophy, and it's also lazy. It's also lazy to just say, well, I'm going to make all of my moral choices on the basis of outcome, because you're refusing to identify, well, what outcomes are better than other outcomes, right? In any event, this is the point of view that other neo-Kantians are coming from. For some ecologically literate neo-Kantian moral philosophers like Rolston, total instrumentalization of an ecological whole is permissible only in situations where it is absolutely necessary to avoid, right? Only in situations like Regan's lifeboat example, to avoid total. So, that's why the key empirical question that we might address from science is this question here, right? Well, next page, okay? Key empirical question: is total instrumentalization of Snake River water resources necessary to avoid total instrumentalization of Earth's climate systems? If you are on any of the anthropocentric committees on either side, obviously the pro-dam side of our final project is largely anthropocentric, but if you're on that side, or if you're on the anthropocentric side of the environmentalist anti-dam community, then you have to be very interested in this empirical question. Okay? And it's obviously a very complex empirical question. But I guarantee you that the dam defender side, the pro-dam, keep the dams in place side, is going to argue that we need to maximize harvesting of falling water. We need to maximize Snake River water resources in order to avoid catastrophic harm to Earth's climate systems. Okay? So that's the key empirical question. And it's obviously extremely complicated, and we don't have enough science to answer it right now. But we might ask, is it right? What is the claim? The claim that the dam defenders are making is that total instrumentalization of the Snake River is necessary to prevent irreversible harm to Earth's climate systems, right? So we might ask, well, what do you mean by that, right? What do you mean by necessary? Is it logically necessary? Is it probably what they're saying is it's practically necessary, right? So we might ask, well, what if we refuse? As citizens of Cascadia, which Leopold might encourage us to do, right? Leopold might say, well, you need to act as plain citizens of your biotic community. And Cascadia is your biotic community. So you ought to act as plain citizens and defend your biotic community and demand that the federal government remove these horrible military installations that are slowing down our river and destroying our salmon runs, right? Does some other ecological whole need to be sacrificed if we citizens of Cascadia refuse to accept total instrumentalization? All right? Maybe that's an even further distillation of the empirical question. Does some other ecological whole, right? We are being asked to sacrifice our ecological whole, Snake River salmon ecosystems, right, which are reliant on Snake River water flowing at a certain rate and being, allowed to move more naturally, right? That's what we're being asked to do, right? by those who are, now they're saying that we need to do this in the name of Mother Earth as a whole. Before they said we need to do this in the name of industry, in the name of producing more and more power, in the name of winning the Cold War against the Soviet Union, which is how most of the dams in the Columbia Basin were sold to the American public. Now, after all those years of being told we had to sacrifice our river for all these other reasons, now we're being told we need to sacrifice our river for the sake of Mother Earth as a whole. Okay? So the question, there's an empirical question, right, that perhaps we can know the answer to. Does some other ecological whole need to be sacrificed if we citizens of Cascadia refuse? Is it necessary to burn more fossil fuels if society extracts less hydropower from the snake? All right, question. That's it, isn't it? Is that the key question? If that's the key question, what's the answer?
We're talking about human comfort, right?
What's the answer?
To have
What's the
power.
answer to that question? And if the answer to that question is no, is that it? Maybe that's not the right question. But what is the answer to that? Is it necessary to burn more? That's the claim, right? If we don't maximize energy extraction from the falling water of the Snake River, then we will have to burn more fossil fuels, right? The Snake River falling water is clean energy. Let's harvest as much of that as we possibly can, because if we don't harvest as much of that, then we have to harvest this other way, which will result in more greenhouse gas emissions, right? More fossil fuel consumption, right? But remember, the real test for the real right? The test that we've studied so far, that the Leopoldians offer us, is vital human needs. Remember? Second order principle 1, second order principle 2 from Collicutt. Remember, Tom Reagan's worse off principle. Remember, these and a whole host of other principles that we haven't studied that we could have studied. These sorts of principles are mediation principles that we're supposed to turn to when we confront conflicts over resource management between vital human needs, real vital necessary human needs, and other kinds of ecosystemic or the needs of other species, right? So the key question, though, is always whether or not these are real vital human needs. So, again, is it necessary to burn more fossil fuels if society extracts less hydropower from the snake? Yes or no?
Yes. Works. You'll have to ship all that stuff with railways at another 1,000, or more trucks into the railways and whatnot, and you're going to pollute a lot more than just keeping those barges coming up with all those tonnages around.
But you don't
Mulier.
Solar power
Right.
or
Wind.
other power or
Don't
wind
need
power.
to
It's
do
the
that.
transportation of the barges I'm talking
We've
about.
made technological advances.
Hydropower is
They might
not
as
the
well
only
just make
clean
bigger
energy
ladders or
available.
something like that.
Maybe-
Wind and solar are pretty bad for getting baseload power, which is what you need constantly.
Humans survive.
Okay, here's what I-
Is what you do when people all turn on their computer.
If I may use this as an illustration of what I mean when I say that we are not after a final answer, we're not after a solution in this class. We're after an understanding of moral truth, okay? And just as an understanding of moral truth is not always consistent with an understanding of what prudentially is the correct course of action, in this case we also will find that an understanding of moral truth is not consistent with, or not necessarily consistent with, the prudentially correct course of action, okay? So, is it necessary to burn more fossil fuels? The answer is no, but prudentially, right? Morally, the answer is no. Morally, it's not logically necessary, nor is it practically necessary, okay? All of the energy we can either forego or we can replace. So it's certainly not logically necessary. If you want to say yes, it's practically necessary, then you have to, then what you mean is that humans are such and such. Humans are of such a type. Or the institutional inertia of our the inertia of our institutions is so great that there is no other realistic choice, right? Given our political situation, our infrastructural, political, energy reliant, etc. situation, we have no practical choice other than, right? That's a prudential line of reasoning. But a moral line of reasoning, the line of reasoning that leads to moral truth, is the line of reasoning that simply asks, is it necessary? Is it absolutely what does that mean? Absolutely necessary. If we didn't, it's not logically necessary, right? So neo-Kantians would say, at the very least, we don't have a perfect duty to continue burning fossil fuels. It's not logically necessary to, it's not we don't have, excuse me, I'm sorry, I got a little off track there. Neo-Kantians would say, okay, it's not logically necessary, so we know we don't have a perfect duty to instrumentalize. We might have an imperfect duty, Kantians would say, if it's practically necessary to instrumentalize in order to avoid global catastrophe, right? And runaway anthropogenic climate destabilization. Right, but we're considering we're considering non-consequentialist and more than anthropocentric perspectives here. Non-consequentialist, all right? And all right. Is it necessary? No. Either of the, I'm suggesting to all of you that it's not necessary in any kind of logical sense. All right? Now, if you concede that humankind today is economically and somehow politically, deeply economically and politically invested in fossil fuel extraction and refinement to such an extent that it's practically very, 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 very difficult to get free of it, then, right? But I like to just remind my students that just approaching this from a moral, philosophical perspective and leaving aside all these political issues, right, which are not really part of this course anyway, because this is an ethics course. Under a stringent neo-Kantian normative theory, total instrumentalization of Snake River water resources would be morally impermissible. I guess I miswrote that. Okay, would be morally permissible. It would be morally permissible to instrumentalize Snake River water completely, right? Total instrumentalization of Snake River water is permissible only if every other alternative also involved total instrumentalization of an ecological whole, right? And that's the kind of the lesson, right? The starkness of Regan's lifeboat example is illustrative. And if that's, if it's true that we have no other choice, right? If the only alternative to total instrumentalization, how would that be proved, right? I don't know. Yes or no? How do you answer yes or no to the if question, right? If, right? How do we know this? If. That's where all these epistemological problems just means problems with knowledge, problems with establishing a truth claim. That's all that means. Those are a very different set of problems than the ones we're concerned with, right? We're concerned with establishing a moral truth claim. In any event, right? And remember, these deep ecologists and most radical environmentalists, I would say, unless you're fully on board with Wilson or Norton and you're totally okay with an anthropocentric axiology, most radical environmentalists, certainly the deep ecologists among them, the true test of the moral rightness of a resource management decision is whether or not it takes care to avoid totally instrumentalizing ecological wholes. All right? And for these stringent neo-Kantians, the only situation in which a resource manager is morally permitted to instrumentalize an ecological whole is one where, like in the lifeboat example, one where not instrumentalizing that ecological whole, right, not throwing the German Shepherd off the lifeboat, compels the manager to throw somebody else off, right, to instrumentalize some other ecological whole. Okay? All right? So forget about this saving human life, you know, we want what we want, humans got to help each other, humans got to save each other's life, all right? Objective moral code, if such a thing is possible, right? But that's what the neo-Kantians are invested in. They're invested in an objective moral code, and they're telling us that under an objective moral code, you cannot, regardless of consequences, right? Because morality is not just about getting the best result for human beings. That's not what morality is about. Morality is about doing the right thing. Damn it, right? So, for these stringent neo-Kantians, the only situation is where, like in Regan's lifeboat example, the only alternative, if we don't throw Snake River salmon into the fire, then we have to throw some other ecological whole into the fire. Okay? And so again, the empirical question, would refusing to totally instrumentalize Snake River water resources compel resource managers elsewhere to instrumentalize some other ecological whole? And why? Yes?
Birds in wind turbines.
Well, surely we could put screens on the dam turbines and prevent the birds from being killed in such numbers, and there are many things we could do about that. But this is an empirical question, isn't it? And I like empirical questions in a philosophy class, because if we could, right? But you have to know why the empirical question is so important. Why this empirical question is so important for a neo-Kantian. Okay? If it's true that we have to instrumentalize something else, some other entity that has that absolute moral status, then the neo-Kantian is okay, right? It's okay. It's all right. It's hard. It's still painful, right? We're still John Muir. We still feel really sad about destruction of Snake River salmon and all those ecosystems, right? But at least, you know, we know that it's necessary to prevent the loss of a larger ecological whole. Okay? But if it's not necessary to prevent the loss of a larger ecological whole, right? And it seems to me the argument that it is, now, okay, this is me talking now. The argument that it is necessary to prevent a larger ecological loss is predicated on the idea that humans are greedy, power-hungry, energy-consuming hogs that just are going to just take advantage of everything, right? And I just disagree with that whole assessment of anthropos, right? But if we accept that anthropos is like that, then perhaps, you know, perhaps these neo-Kantians are correct and we do need to sacrifice. But I say just stop it all. Just stop it. And it's not necessary to continue consuming, you know, it just isn't. And it's a matter of political will, right? If we lack the political will, that's not an argument against the normative claim that we are obligated to do this, right? The heroin addict is obligated to quit consuming heroin. It's a normative claim that can easily is defended regardless of whether or not the heroin addict is physically capable of doing so or not because of his addiction or her addiction, right? Same thing with USA and our political system, right? The moral claim that the USA's political system is obligated to immediately withdraw from all consumption of fossil fuels is, you know, the moral truth of that claim has nothing to do with whether or not the body politic is actually capable of doing that. right? Take a survey in Walmart, you know, and you'll find the answer is no, we're not capable of doing that at all. But, you know, the survey in Walmart or anywhere else has no bearing whatsoever on the moral truth that we have an obligation to wean ourselves of fossil fuels. In any event, right? I mean, I'm just saying, right? If we accept this neo-Kantian point of view, okay? It's only from a neo-Humean and a consequentialist point of view where we accept that we're already far enough down the rabbit hole that we can begin to rationalize the ongoing consumption of fossil fuels and the ongoing, you know, a lot of what we do, right? Because we're already far enough down the serpent windings of utilitarianism. In any event, this is what, you know, again, my ambitions are very modest. If I can just get my students to start to understand why a non-consequentialist response to the situation we find ourselves in might be attractive. Okay. The only situation in which a resource manager is morally permitted is one which not instrumentalizing the ecological whole. Okay, so anyway, I've already been through this. Let's see where we are from here. I know we can get through a lot. We have a lot more to get through. Okay, so David Watson, a fascinating essay, a beautiful essay. He distinguishes between technique, techniques, and technology. And if I could all too briefly summarize, this is an example of technique. This is the Great Horseshoe Falls at Celilo Falls, a cluster of waterfalls on the main stem of the Columbia River. But this is the main part. They build these platforms around here. And this would be an example of what David Watson calls technique, done by all societies, not identical, varies from culture to culture. Really, it's not until we get to technology that things really change. But these are historic photographs of Celilo Falls. These are the infamous fishing wheels that caused so much trouble back in the 30s and 40s. And then here is the Dalles Dam. And so David Watson would identify the Dalles Dam as an instance of technology. And David Watson insists that that technology is dramatically different. That it's as though once we cross a threshold into technology, we're just not talking about technique and techniques anymore. We're talking about something that's just fundamentally different. All right? And the fundamental difference of technology is not, well, it's not anything conceptual. It's just the comprehensiveness of techniques. Geometric linking together, systemization, and universalization of technical, anyway. A total system homogenized by Baconian science. There's that Francis Bacon popping his head up again. 1620 Novum Organum, the dawn of the scientific revolution. Right, that's what's being referred to here. And our reading for next week discusses Francis Bacon. So that's why I try to get you guys on track. All right. Let's see what if I need to emphasize anything more here. I don't. More photographs of Celilo Falls. There's the fish wheel. There's the Dalles Dam from above. That in-lieu fishing site that I mentioned would probably be. Let's see. This is I-84 right here. Anyway, wait a minute now, this might even be the Washington side. Yeah, well, yeah, this is the Washington side, that's right. So that in-loop, this is I-84 right up here. This is the Oregon side up here, this is the Washington side. This is the Dalles Dam. I believe they have two fish ladders. This is one fish ladder right here. And then the other fish ladder is somewhere over here. I'm pretty sure the Dalles Dam has two fish ladders, but obviously this is one right here. Anyway, that in-lieu fishing site by the Dalles. So if you go on a philosophy field trip, which I encourage all of you to do, you will go east on Highway 84, and you will. This is the town of the Dalles right here. This is the shopping center right here, Anyway, but if you look down here, there's a cluster of RVs and trailers and buildings and stuff, and that's an in-lieu fishing site for river Indians and treaty fisher people who have, whose sites were displaced when Bonneville Dam, right? Bonneville Dam is way down here, but the whole gorge, all the way up to Celilo Falls was a whole series of fishing sites, and these were all flooded. And so now we have 31 in-lieu sites on both the Washington side and the Oregon side. On the Oregon side, they're clustered down there, and they're surrounded by the Dalles Dam on two sides, and then on the other side is the railway and the freeway. And it's always striking to me when I go that way to think of people, trying to hang on right there. Trying to maintain their traditional way of life right there, surrounded by industry on all sides. So we don't have a lot of time left. Wow, and there's the Stevens Treaties. I know we already went over that. What's going on here? All right, well, technological mega machine, perhaps a way of understanding the point that David Watson is making here is this could be a photograph of a hydropower project anywhere in the world. You wouldn't know, unless you were really familiar with the background. You would not know. This could be in China. This could be in Argentina. This could be in Oregon or Washington. It could be anywhere, because the point is that science and technology have provided a universalistic modality for capturing value from natural resources. All right? And technology is not neutral. Okay? This is David Watson's key point. And it's not just it's not his point. He's building on a whole host of other thinkers that came before him, some of which are environmental pragmatists, by the way. Lewis Mumford comes out of the classical school of American philosophy. In fact, Lewis Mumford is often cited as a classical American pragmatist. Even though he's not a philosopher, he's a sociologist. But David Watson insists again and again that technology is not neutral, and this goes against what we commonly think about technology. All right? The myth of technology is that technology is neutral, that technology is just a means, right? David Watson says that technology determines our ends as well as our means. Okay? Such ubiquitous means themselves eventually become ends, requiring their inevitable characterological internalization in human beings. In other words, human beings must obey and thus become the slaves of their technological slaves. It is the system itself that, once set up, gives orders. This self-inflicted impotence is the other side of total control. Technology is more than the sum of its parts. This totality undermines human independence, community, and freedom, undermines mutual aid, right? Undermines the natural human ability to cooperate. This totality undermines human independence, community, right? Mutual aid, freedom, creating mass beings who are creatures of universal apparatus, standardized subjects who derive their meaning from the gigantic apparatus of mass communication, a one-way barrage of mystification and control. Even those supposedly directing the machines are themselves its creatures, each one isolated in a compartment of the giant opaque hive, right? Those banksters on Wall Street, who fashion themselves as masters of the universe, well, guess what? They're following a computer program. They're not masters of the universe at all. right? They're just following some program generated by some machine, some computer on Madison Avenue, right? The blind centrifugal complexity of the system defies conscious control, coming more and more to resemble a locomotive with no throttle, hurtling toward an abyss. David Watson invites us to imagine a society in which human beings are autonomous from technology, in which human beings deliberately put limitations around technology, right? And he suggests that thought experiment, the answer is no. You can't imagine such a society. And so that thought experiment directs us to something that should be a bit troubling, namely that human beings do not have an autonomous relationship with the general trajectory of technology, and technology has overwhelmed us. All right? And technology produces what we are. Okay? Anybody worry about being phony, about being genuine, about noticing the phoniness around us? Anybody worry about that in high school? Anybody read books about that? You know, and worry about how mass marketing manufactures our identities? Anybody worry about being authentic? What does it mean to be authentic? In any event, we live in a society where authenticity is hard to come by because individuality is mass produced, all right? And we're the individuality of technological society, right? The human individuality of the technological mega machine is a privatized, narcissistic, passive-aggressive, alienated rage, engaging in a sadomasochistic play far removed from the consequences of its unfocused, destructive impulses. Everything becomes instrumentalized. No, everyone was here Tuesday and today. All right, is that okay?
No, I was gonna say, isn't
Well, just mark you all present for Tuesday and today.
wasn't Bookchin saying that technology is what we do use to move kind of past like a post-scarcity? And, I mean, I know it's.
This is social ecology. Thank you for reminding us that, yeah, this guy is fleshing out in more detail Bookchin's point of view. But no, this is all fully consistent with Bookchin, isn't it? Or is it not? You're suggesting that it's not?
I'm wondering.
Well, it is a little bit terrifying that part of the point that's being made here is that consequentialist reasoning is itself the problem. Consequentialist reasoning wedded to technology and capitalism is itself the problem. And I don't know, obviously we need to keep talking about the Snake River and about this idea that total instrumentalization of the Snake River is necessary. And in order, right, and that's a very consequentialist, utilitarian conclusion, right? And the suggestion here that David Watson is making is that consequentialist utilitarian conclusion is one generated by mainstream society, but is also one which may be part of the very problem that's driving us pell-mell toward